Hey everyone, hope you're all right. How's it going? That just suddenly changed me rather quick. I forgot it's 30 seconds. So I just moved the chair forward. Hope you can all hear me all right. I'll just go in the comments and welcome everyone in a minute. And yeah, hope everyone's had a good week. Mine's not been too bad, although there was something happened Thursday and Friday. I didn't work, but it's been nice to have a little bit of time off and get things sorted. But it's been a bit frustrating on the other side of things as well. I'll go into that, which kind of made me think about what to do for today's live, which is basically making pure water. Um, I guess some people would be interested to know how to do it. A lot of you probably do it yourselves anyway, so it's like trying to teach your granny to suck eggs, so to speak. So apologies uh, in advance for that. So going onwards, then I'll just go over a bit of a recap what I've had for this week. Then I'll welcome everyone into the comments. It's been all right window cleaning so far. Lovely weather Monday to Wednesday. Thursday and Friday, it become a bit cooler and overcast. I was a bit jealous actually, because if I was working, that'd be the ideal time for me to work. It's not too hot. It was cool enough to work hard and fast without being affected by the hot weather. But I couldn't work because there's a problem. If you remember, I think on one of my lives I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I fitted a pressure gauge on my system so that I could basically see what the excuse me, what the pressure was of the water as it fed into the RO membrane, because I had no way of telling. And when I did that, I cracked. Uh, this is the wrong size, but an elbow joint like this fitting. I just cracked it just there, so there's a lot of water coming out. So I needed to replace that. I put an order in for some other stuff I needed. It was over 400 quid with Xline. And they had at the time, there was a warning saying it'd be 4 to 5 days dispatch, but it ended up being a lot longer than that. And I rang up and they basically sent stuff out. So I got it in the end, but all in all, from ordering it to receiving it was about 2 weeks. And then when I got the part, the bit that I did phone up and ask what size it would need, because there's a choice of three, I got told the wrong size. So when I undid it all to fit this bit in, that's when I found out it was the wrong size. So that happened Wednesday night and I was proper deflated. You probably know what it's like. You go hell and earth just so that come the morning, 8 o'clock, you're out cleaning windows. So the day the workflow can go quite well and all the admin you're doing around that. And it just seems sometimes whatever you do, things are just against you. So I was really proper deflated. So when I rang up then Friday, because I knew I can't make water because I took my system apart and I thought I'm not putting it apart together again just to make it when something could arrive soon. So I rang up, told them I got the wrong size, reordered the new size. They sent it out. Luckily, they prioritized it for me. So I actually did receive the part on the Friday. I was expecting it to be probably on the Monday. So I was expecting to be not working tomorrow, but it arrived Friday. I changed the part around. I'm working Monday. So I'm in a lot of a happier place. And that's what made me think, right, about making basically pure water, because without it, the water fed pole system's dead in the water, isn't it? And if you can't make it, you're going to buy it through spotless water, that sort of thing. And then depending on your water out of your tap, depends on whether you need to go the full reverse osmosis and DI or just DI alone. So that's what I thought made me do for today's live, basically. So that's what happened Thursday, Friday. And then plus I was gutted because the weather was perfect to work, so I could work my nuts off because it's not too hot. But there we go. I'm 2 days behind. So anyway, I'll just go over to the comments. Welcome people into the chat because some of you are well in advance of me. You're right, Lee. You just already asked. I have a backpack and a univalve to conserve water. Can I not rinse first, turn the water off, scrub, then water on, and rinse the windows afterwards? Thoughts for anyone? I think there's no right and wrong way. Wrong way. Excuse me. But working off a backpack and a univalve, I can see where you're coming from to conserve water because the backpack doesn't it filled right to the very brim as far as you can get in it. It's 22 litres. And you'll read stuff where some people say they can do a whole house. Like I probably used 3 backpacks to one house when I first started. A little bit quicker, but it's all down to the flow of water. To get a decent flow of water, you've got to work fast enough. So there's lots of variables in that. But personally, I would have the water on while I'm scrubbing. And then obviously you're going to need the water on to rinse. But if you come to anything stubborn, what I would say is have the water on while you're cleaning. There's no harms, I suppose, with turning the water off when you're coming across a stubborn stain, and use a lot of scrubbing and then turn the water on and off as and when needed. But obviously you need to turn it on to rinse as well. It's a hard one because it's difficult, mate, when you go into, I would say, with the windows. I've always said when you're cleaning, I just said to my son, basically, it's clean when it's clean. Every window can be slightly different. Every house, obviously. If it's a maintenance clean, it probably theory would work better. But if it's a first clean, it wouldn't, if that makes sense. So it depends how dirty the window is. I just keep the water on and scrub, and you keep scrubbing until it appears to be clean. Then I rinse it, and I always tell my son, just keep cleaning it till it looks clean. So it's a bit hard one to judge, but I see where you're coming from because you're trying to conserve water. Because I guess you're working from perhaps a car, small van, and with a backpack, you're working from barrels of water. So when you run out, you're having to fill up your backpack with barrels of water, and that is really hard work. I've done it for over a month when my van was off the road, and I wasn't nowhere near as busy as I am now. So proper respect to that. It's hard work. I would personally just keep the water on and adjust your flow rate. It's difficult because if your flow rate is too slow, it's going to require more scrubbing. And if it's too fast, but you're coming across a stubborn stain, you feel like you're wasting water. That makes sense. And obviously, you need a good flow for a good rinse. So it's a bit of a hard one to ask. That's my thoughts on it anyway. I'll just open up to everyone else and see what everyone else says, Lee. Just coming over. You all right, Matt? He's just saying, evening, guys. Hope everyone has a great week in the sun. The weather today has definitely changed, isn't it, compared to what was the last few days? So I haven't checked the weather actually for next week, but I assume it's going to be a lot warmer. You're right, Ched. He's just saying, sorry, I won't be able to make it tonight. I'll catch up in the week. Have a great one, everyone. Hey, Mark, you all right, mate? You all right, Nelly? How'd the reefs go over the week? Because you had quite a few, didn't you? Was it 3 reefs, you said? And all in the hot weather as well before it turned cool. Nelly's just saying, there you go, mate, to you, Lee. Nelly's saying, yes, you can do what you're thinking of. I suppose the best way is trial and error, isn't it? Is to try these things out and keep an eye on how things go to kind of judge it, because everything's got a fine line to find what you're comfortable with. So don't worry too much about what everyone else does, although it's good to get advice and stuff. Just do what you feel you're comfortable with. So Nelly's saying, give it a try. You can do that. So why not try it? It's all trial and error, isn't it, mate? And like I say, just go into the weeds of it. Depends how dirty the window is or not. You all right, James? How you doing, mate? All right, Tal Pro Clean. He's just saying to you, Lee, as long as the glass isn't drying out too quick, which is another good point to bring up, especially with the hot weather we've had. Obviously, the last couple of days haven't been too bad. But he's saying you can in theory. So again, there's a lot of things come into play. And you might find one side of the house is in the shade and one house isn't. So one half at least could be different to the other. Matt's saying, oh, sorry, that he used a backpack for about 18 months and it's hard work. And it's like I said, I found it hard work just for a month because you're lifting barrels of water out of your van. You're trying to tip it in. So it's all going on your back. And when you're an old fart like me, I'm nearly 50 next year. So I might as well say I'm 50. It's surprising what it does. And plus you're lifting the barrels in and out of the car as well, or the van. And then you're having to fill them up. It is hard work working out of a backpack or trolley system. However, if you're first starting out, it's a great way as well to get into things, isn't it? And work your way up. So, yeah, if anyone's else got any other good tips for Lee there, I can see his point trying to conserve water. Um, and I suppose the better you get, or the more you've done it cleaning windows, the quicker you're going to get at cleaning the window, which is going to help as well. But it's hard when you're first starting out because you want everything to be really good because you want your customer to want you to come back 4 or 8 weeks or whatever it is you're doing to be a returning customer. And I totally get that as well. I mean, I was bad for over cleaning. Everyone here knows how bad I was for that. Mark's just saying that he started with a 35-litre trolley system, used it on a low flow to save water, but it took longer. I don't miss it. So I guess it's playing around with the flow rates really. And like you're saying, the thing is as well, Lee, I'd say is soon, because some certain birds already having young'uns now, but at some point they're all going to go mad. And then when the young fledglings start flying, there's going to be poo all over the windows. And in this hot weather, they're going to be baked on. So by the time you get there, it's hard to get off. So any bird poo you come across, I would pre-soak that window. So let's say you're cleaning one window, the next window along you've already seen there's bird poo. I would just focus on the bird poo itself and pre-wet that for a bit. Go back to the window you're cleaning. So when you come to the next window, that bird poo has been soaked with a bit of water and it's going to help hopefully get it off. And obviously the next window you're cleaning, if you see the same thing, do the same thing as well. So pre-soak it, pre-wet it. So kind of like what you're saying would make sense as well. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Dawn Window Cleaning saying Pure Freedom Trolley, you can put 20-litre barrels on and it uses the full-size pump, same as you've got in the van, which is cracking as well. Like I've got a 45-litre trolley from X-Line, plastic, but it's just similar to the Nano trolley, as in you've got exactly the same pump and controller on it as what I've got in the van. And that's what I wanted. Rather than with the backpack, it's kind of a bit of guesswork and you've got to feel for it or kind of eye it. So that's what I like about the 45-litre trolley. However, the gardener's backpack is really worth having. That was my first trolley system in effect because I brought a backpack and then started put it on trolleys rather than carrying it around like a sack barrow. But it's really handy to have. It comes in handy if you're walking through a garage to clean a couple of windows around the back. Backpack's perfect for that. So even if you go from a backpack to something else, that backpack won't go to waste. Or like Matt uses his from Your Cleaner Windows, and so do many others, use it as something to put TFR in. So you can then use that to spray on a pole to apply TFR to the high up stuff, basically. So the backpack will be a really good investment. So I just seen another comment that's coming as well. Mark's just saying, I've seen a 70-litre trolley system, but yeah, it'd be heavy to lift in and out. We find the 45-litre trolley I've got from X-Line, it weighs like 21 kilograms, I think, without water in it. You can put 2 barrels of water in there, so 50 litres, but even if you called it 45 plus 21, that's going to be 66 kilograms. That's a lot to lift in and out. And then to be effective, you've got to trial and error, but kind of judge how much water to put in to clean a property. So when you lift it in, it's pretty much near empty. But luckily, I don't work on my own, work with my son. Or when Sophie's worked with us a 3, so we always did like a 2-man lift for that. But it is definitely something to bear in mind. It's all going to hit you back, especially the busier you get. Dawn Window Clean, sorry, saying, or if you can only use a backpack, maybe trad the bottoms. So another way of conserving water, which is a really good point. A lot of people do this as well, especially when they're transitioning from a traditional, say, to water-fed pole, or even starting out full stop, is use your backpack and a pole to reach the higher windows, but use traditional on the bottom ones. So it stretches your backpack and the water for your backpack out a bit further. That's another good thing to do. Plus, as well, you're learning different disciplines of the trade, so to speak. I mean, even if I was just completely water fed pole only, I would still want to learn trad because I'm a window cleaner, so I should be able to clean windows in all methods really. And some people, when you clean the insides, use traditional, so it's not a bad thing to go out and learn. I'm not necessarily no way near what a good traditional window cleaner is. I'm not going to be as quick as them, if you get what I mean. But it's another handy skill set to have. Plus, with traditional window cleaning, there's stuff you can use from that to your water fed pole. So, for example, you think about traditional window cleaning when you watch a lot of it, they're using the applicator or the scrubber to apply the soapy solution on the glass, but it necessarily doesn't get everything off. So you have to use a scraper. So as long as the glass is wet, you can use a scraper. It's exactly the same for water fed pole, isn't it? When you come to something really difficult, like going back to bird poo, you could pre-wet everything and then use the glass scraper like they do traditional, and then carry on with your water fed pole, for example. So it's going to help you learning a bit of trad anyway, or seeing how they do stuff. So it's all got to be useful, isn't it? And it's nice to do something different than norm. So I don't mind a little bit of trad here and there. Although water fed pole, it's definitely the way to go. Excuse me, I'm going to have a drink. Rum and Coke. That's better. I've probably got another one or two drinks left, and that's the bottle finished. Not all today, I might add. So anyway, going back to what I was thinking of doing today, which is basically about reverse osmosis and DI, or making your own pure water. Now, probably most of you are watching. I think I've got 13 watching right now who watch this. Been window cleaning a while, water fed pole, and already are probably making their own water. Excuse me. Still hanging about. But some of you might be new to all this, just getting started and don't want to invest the money into it. And you're probably through that research phase, if that makes sense. So I'll just try and find something on the internet. I'll just try and get a page up, sorry. Got to type. Not the fastest. So, for example, you could go Spotless Water, these sort of places. Go on their website. They'll tell you, I've mentioned it before, where the nearest one is located to you. And it might be worth perhaps buying in the water. So it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a year access to these points. And if you're on their website, you'll get notifications the nearest one to you, whether it's closed or open. And as you can see, just pitch up with your van, and there's a pump, just like filling up your van with fuel, basically. Fill up your tank with water. And it's not a bad system. I've used it. And when I was working remotely from home, luckily I was near Spotless Water, so it enabled me to get the job done over a couple of days because I had to refill my van twice. But it does work out expensive in the long run. So what do I mean by that? Well, I've got a 500 litre tank. I think it works out around about just under £30, but just round it up for argument's sake, about 30 quid to fill up a 500 litre tank. And if that's what you use in a day, just think that's £30 a day it's costing you. Whereas if you make it yourself, it's a hell of a lot cheaper. I haven't worked out actually. This is something I should do, maybe make a video on, is how much does it cost me to make pure water at home? So obviously it's the price of electricity, excuse me. For me to fill up a 1,000 litre tank of pure water, it takes around me, I think I haven't completely timed it properly for recently, but I think it was about 3 or 4 hours. So it's the 3 or 4 hours worth of electricity plus whatever you're going to get charged for the water. And then obviously if you work out how much resin you're using per year, maybe divide that by how many days in a year, that's going to be on top. And the same with your membrane. But it'll work out a hell of a lot cheaper than Spotless Water if you make it yourself. Yeah, I think that's going to be possibility a good video for me to get in the weeds to work that one out, or at least show the workings out. I'll come to that conclusion. So sometimes it'll work. Well, it will work out cheaper making it yourself. However, it can cost you a lot of money to set up. So spotless water is good. It is handy. But if you get really, really busy, to lower your costs, it's probably worth making your own pure water. So I just had a comment come in, so I'll come up with it. Mark's just saying, I only brought my RO system because spotless water in Leeds was always out of order and it's 7 miles drive one way. So there and back is 14 miles. And I suppose if you've got to fill up before you finish work, it's the same again, isn't it? It's handy. It's a good stop measure. Don't get me wrong. And like for me, when I worked in Aldershot, I wouldn't have done that job in Aldershot if it wasn't for spotless water. And luckily for me, the job was paying well enough that I could absorb the cost. But it does work out for me where I am better to make it myself because it's about 25-minute drive for me to get to spotless water. And then I've got to do the same to come home. And those who watch my channel know that lunchtime I always go home to probably to fill up as well. So that'd be a nightmare for me. But yeah, I just thought I'd go into something first and I'll perhaps show you the kit that I use. So I'll just get the screen share up and you'll know I use X-Line stuff. And if you look on X-Line underneath, basically for water purification and systems, filter systems, you've got different filters here along the top and you've got different various methods where you can, so I'll just get rid of this, pick this. It's confusing when you don't know, but I'll show you the system I've got. The one I've got is this specific one here. So it's where it says GPD, that's how many gallons per day that it can make. Now, just remember, whatever you go for, when it says gallons per day, that is if that system is running under optimum. I can't even talk right. Too many rum and cokes, I think. Conditions. So it comes down to like your tap water pressure, which we'll go into, TDS, all that kind of stuff. But if everything's perfect, my system in 24 hours, non-stop running, can do 2,000 gallons per day. That's what it's trying to say. But what I've got as well is also this bit here where it's an auto fill and flush. So, you know, like in your toilets, I've forgotten what it's called now, where it knows when to stop filling the system up. It's got something like that in it, basically. So it's got an auto fill. So as soon as it drops down the level, it starts filling up. When the water level gets so far, just like in your toilet system, it stops the machine making water. And then what the auto flush is, wrong button. What the auto flush is to protect the life of the membrane, which does the majority of the work making you pure water. To make it last longer, it needs to be flushed through. So rather than me having to do it manually, it does it automatically. So basically, when I turn the machine on, how this works is it does an auto flush straight away for 5 minutes. I don't need to do anything. And then if I remember rightly, after every hour, it does another flush system and then continues that until I've got enough water in what I've got as a holding tank rather than the tank in my van. So it does it automatically. I don't need to be there doing this. So it basically prolongs the life of my membrane. So I get more money's worth out of the membrane, basically. So that's what the auto flush means. And then you've got this RO filter. So that's reverse osmosis. And it's also got DI. So inside this grey bit here, that's basically everything where it does the autofill and flush. So it's all automated. And then also on this bit here where the hand is, a plug goes in there because what I've got is a pump. Got what the pump's called now. Because my water pressure is under 50 psi for my house, to get it through the membrane at the required pressure it needs to be to make my membrane work efficiently and last longer, I basically need a pump. So it's a booster pump, sorry. So the booster pump will kick in and the system runs itself basically. So whenever it starts filling with water, it'll kick in the booster pump because it detects it's under 50 psi, and that puts the water pressure through the membrane at the correct pressure that's needed in order to me to get the best out of the membrane and the best money's worth basically. So what you could probably see is that whole system, which shocked me, is that figure there, 1,548. But if you include VAT, it's £1,857.60. When I first bought that 7 years ago, I think it was 1,400. But that's the price of living for you, isn't it? But that's the system I've got. And then also this vessel here goes resin. So that's your DI. That's the system I've got. So, oh, if you're looking into, sorry, I'll just catch up on some comments before I get too far ahead of myself. Mills Cleaning saying you've got a Bailey's RO4040 system, no electricity, just straightforward. Sorry, mate, I'm trying to get my head round that, and it works without any electric. But that sounds awesome. And there's different things out there to do the same job. So if you're trying to look at all this for guidance, if you're new, I would probably do your research around on the internet, YouTube, and everything like that to learn the terminology, if that makes sense. So when you look around for a supplier who's caught your eye, at least when you ring them and then ask them questions, you're going to be aware of the terminology that they're using, if that makes sense. And if you don't understand it, just ask, they'll explain it, and they will tell you the best equipment that suits your needs for where you are. Hopefully this makes sense, because when I spoke to Xline, they're asking me, what is my PSI from the tap pressure? I was like, no idea. What is your TDS levels? No idea. So they told me how to work it out. And then once I worked them out, they're able to advise me. I hope that kind of makes sense for anyone that's new. Matt's just saying he's so lucky his water TDS out of the tap is 43 to 55. Get away with a double DI system. I worked out earlier that it costs you £45 per month using 7 litres of water a month. Wow. I'm just trying to say, for me, like, I've worked out I use 700 litres a day. So if I did 10 days, that'd be 7,000 litres. 20 days, thinking that you do 4 weeks in a month, that'd be 1,000. So that'd probably cost me £86. However, my TDS level that comes out of my tap is 246. So my resin won't produce the amount of water that Matt's got, if you get what I mean. It'd cost me an effing fortune, which I'll come on to late. And if you're new, just try and keep up. I'll try and explain it as well. And so were the guys on here. Mark's saying as well, I brought my RO system from Pure Freedom before they merged with Window Cleaning Warehouse. Yeah, Pure Freedom are really, really good. I know someone who got in touch with me. His name was John. I won't say what companies he's from. He spoke really highly of Pure Freedom. And that's through him I found out that Window Cleaning Warehouse basically brought Pure Freedom out. And is it, correct me right, lads, I think anyone that worked with Pure Freedom was taken on, is it by Ionics? I think the staff has gone there. So if you're a big fan of Pure Freedom, it might be worth chasing up Hit from Ionics. And Nellie's just saying how lucky you are, Matt. But yeah, like I say, there's two different routes. Basically, you can do reverse osmosis and what's called DI, deionization, or DI only. And then, like what Matt's saying, is when you do DI, you can do what's called double DI to even further stretch your money. So I'll kind of go into that. But in fact, sod it, I'll just do it now. Let's see if I can find something for you. Just bear with me. Sorry, the screen's doing weird things on my computer. What I'll do is I'll go through as if you're doing DI first. So I'll try and find resin. So I'm just waiting for this screen to load up. Right, here we go. Okay, I've just gone on the Xline website. Obviously, there's different suppliers out there. Use the one that you like. Cheers. So this here is your DI vessel. All right. So pure water is deionized water, basically. And this thing here is what will make it. So in the middle, you got this white bit. Okay, it's got fancy names called a diffuser. And then inside here, this thing's doing weird stuff. It's called resin. So you fill it full of resin. That resin, once water starts passing through it, wears out and needs to be replaced, basically. For those who don't know, in your tap water, I'll just quickly go over it. Sorry if I'm teaching you to suck eggs, but in case you're new and looking into understanding water fed pole, in your tap water, there's things called impurities. So just think of it as all the minerals and chemicals, and there's a big list that they all break down to. And in the world of window cleaning and other things, it's called total dissolved solids. TDS for short. The higher the number, the harder the water. The lower the number, the softer the water. So Matt's saying it's between 43 and 55 parts per million. Let's just say worst case scenario for Matt is 53 parts per million. So in every million bits of water, 53 of them are impurities. The rest of it is really good. So that's soft water, very soft water. You can get stuff like this called a TDS meter. And inside will be something like this. Take this off, stick a jug of water. I'm not going to stick it in rum and coke. You can put it in there, and there's buttons on here where you can see the temperature of it or the TDS levels. There's hold, because the moment you take it out, the level changes. If you press a button on here called hold whilst this bit is submerged in water, it will take the level. So when you take it out, it stays on there, and it gives you a reading in parts per million. So that will tell you how hard or how soft your water is. So if you was new and you was to ring up a water supplier, I would go and buy one of these from your supplier first. £25 is probably what they cost these days. Don't get cheap Chinese ones. Get one from a supplier. It'll be more accurate. And then look it up on YouTube, and you'll see how to take your water reading out of the tap. And I'll take it out of the tap that's going to feed your system when you've got a filtration unit in there, and get your TDS level readings. Another thing you need to do is some kind of pressure gauge that you can also attach to the same tap to get the pressure in PSI or bar. Mainly PSI is what they're going to ask for, of what the water pressure is. Them two figures there are going to be what your supplier needs to know in order to guide you through what would be best for your scenario. Other things come into it, like how much water a day you're going to make. But when you first start, it's going to be minimal, but you're going to get busy and it's going to be quite a lot. So the different ways of doing it. Sorry, just coming back to the comments, trying to keep up with them. Nelly's saying RODI, which is reverse osmosis as well as deionization. So I'll try to keep up with it. Works out cheaper, but it's a bigger outlay in the beginning. So it's an expensive, like my unit now would be 1,850 something pound. Seems a lot of money, but in the course of a year, it's going to save me a hell of a lot of money, basically, than trying to do it a bit cheaper. But it depends what your budget is, doesn't it? But it's worth looking into. Matt's just asking you, Nelly, do you think it would still work out cheaper for you? I would definitely say so, Matt. Definitely. If you keep up with me, I'll try and come on to it. I'm trying to basically put it in a way where people who know about it and people who don't, if that makes sense. So I'll just go back to your deionization, basically. So going back to the screen, if you're going to do DI only, basically, once you've done your tap reading with the TDS meter. Yeah, sorry, just in another comment, I'll just come back to that. Nelly's just saying basically you can also get sewerage charge knocked off your bill. So when you're putting your tap water through your filtration unit system, be it DI or RO, Well, it's not DI basically because there's no wastewater. With reverse osmosis, there's wastewater, which we'll come on to. But that wastewater, if it's going down the drain, you pay drainage. If, like me, I've got it going in a separate IBC tank, another tank in my garden, basically. And then from that, the water goes around and waters my garden, irrigates it because it's not going down the drain. You can use a meter to measure how much water is going around your garden as opposed to down the drain and claim money back off your water bill because you're not paying sewage or drainage, if that makes sense. The best advice to go on there is look up your company that supplies you with water, speak direct to them and they will guide you through it, basically. Luckily for me, this is where I'm lucky. I'm not on a water meter. So I'm £40 a month for my water bill and that is it. So that's where I'm lucky. But I'm unlucky in the fact that I've got high TDS hard water, which I'll come on to in a bit. So yeah, hopefully that kind of makes sense. If anyone doesn't understand it, shove it in the comments. Lads will answer you, and I'll try and answer it the best I can as well. But going back anyway to deionization, when you've done your TDS meeting, TDS reading, rather, if it's under 100 parts per million, basically what they're saying is it's soft water. So you can get away with doing what Matt's doing, which is just using this vessel here filled with resin, and that's your deionization. But what Matt does is he uses two of these. So it goes through one vessel, feds through a second vessel. So it's getting double filtered basically to make it a bit cheaper on the resin. Bear with me if you don't know what I'm on about. But the problem here is if you're producing a lot of pure water, even though it's 100 parts per million or just under, you would be better off with a reverse osmosis because it's going to lower the amount of times you need to change the resin, therefore save you money. But like what Nelly's saying is, it's a big outlay in the beginning. However, it's going to save you in the long term. If you're like Matt saying he's between 43 and 55, so normally if you're about 50 or under, you can probably get away with DI or double DI. But again, if your production of water is really high, the amount of times you're buying resin means it's going to cost you a lot more money. So to reduce that, I would go reverse osmosis and DI rather than DI only, if that makes sense. Where I am, my parts per million, when I use the TDS meter from the tap that feeds my system, using that, I measured it because I'll go into what happened. Well, I think I already have. It's 264 parts per million. Now, there's a lot of people higher than that as well. So it's hard water. So if I was just to use the resin vessel only deionization, I would be going through 2 bags of resin a month. Let's have a look at the cost of resin. Basically, resin for me, sorry, that's 5 litres. Here we go. A bag of resin from X-Line, this uses Spectrum, is £94, 74p including VAT, plus I'm going to have delivery on that. If I went through window cleaning warehouse and used Unga, you're talking about 104 quid. That would be costing me that in resin every month because that has happened to me before. In fact, it is happening where it's costing me that every 2 weeks, which I'll come into a bit as we go on. Hopefully it makes sense. So Mark's is saying his TDS level is 80 parts per million. So that's good. It's under 100, so it's soft water. But if you're using like a large volume of water every day, you're going to be putting more water through the resin. So the resin's going to wear out. So you're going to have to replace it quicker. So basically, if you're coming to the point where you're paying a lot per month for your resin, whatever your TDS level is, I would go RO and DI, which I'll come on to in a minute. But going back to this bag of resin, like I was saying, I can't remember what Matt said. Did you say you're using A bag of resin a month. Where was your comment? Sorry, mate. So it's costing you 40. So you're using half a bag of resin per month, shall we say? So you're using a full bag every 2 months. If you was to go through reverse osmosis, then DI, the TDS level, I'll take it back out of this. Don't know why I keep putting in there. TDS level reading you'll have after the RO filter would probably be between 3 and 5, as opposed to 43 and 55. And you'll probably find one vessel or half a bag of resin will last you 6 to 9 months. That's the difference between using reverse osmosis or not. The harder the water area, the less that's going to be. Now, for example, I'll just say to Matt, in fact, my TDS level, like I said, says 264. I'm going to get a new membrane because I've had to order a new one. That's another reason why I thought I'd do this live, and I'll come on to that. When I put the new membrane in there, my TDS level is going to be between 3 and 5 after it's come through the membrane. Then it's going to go through the resin, and that will last me between 6 and 9 months. So to be honest, that bag of resin that you see in here, just say for roughly 100 quid, will last me 1 year because it's going through that membrane. As the membrane starts to wear out, the TDS starts climbing after the filter. And then what you'll find is your resin won't last as long. And obviously, the more water you're putting through the system as well, if that increases, that's going to have an effect on the resin, if that makes sense. So there's bits of variables. So I've just seen some comments come in as well, I think. Sorry, Nelly there. I don't think on. So you're saying your RO is TDS after it's been through the membrane, and I bet that's currently is 9. So if you had a brand new membrane, it's probably less than that as well. But there you go, Matt. Hopefully that shows you, even if it knocked down your TDS levels, say from even 43 down to 9, you can see your resin's going to last a lot longer than what it's doing now. So it will save you money. But like Nelly's saying, the outlay of the system is a lump sum. But what you'll save over the year and the following years will probably be worth it. Matt's just asking, as your water's soft, does that mean you'd have less wastewater? Right. Just to cover those, in case those who don't know, when you're making pure water, just think there's two terminologies. You've got wastewater, which Matt's using, and you'll hear product. Product, just think, is the pure water you make, and the wastewater is the water that goes either down the drain or to avoid paying drainage, you're feeding the plants in your garden. There's different settings you can adjust with your RO unit, and it's normally set at what's called 60% 40. So basically, it's saying 60% of the water going through the system will end up as pure water, 40% will end up as waste, if that makes sense. And you can adjust it to get it like 50-50 or 60-40. Can change it, but if you get it to produce, say, so that it's nearer 100% pure water, so it's going to make less wastage, what will happen is the amount of time it takes to make pure water is a hell of a lot longer. So you're going to slow down the rate that it makes it, and it's going to put more drain on the system. So your membrane's going to take a hit, wear out faster. Same with the resin. And if you did it the other way, so it produces more waste, less pure, it'll probably make it faster. But again, I think it will all affect the system. So the sweet spot is basically 60-40%. And if you really need to tweak it, don't go any different than 50-50. So 60-40 is the sweet spot, basically. And I think what Matt's trying to say as well, which I don't know the answer, to be honest, and hopefully someone will answer it, because his TDS level's so hard, will his wastage? But normally just say, if it was 50-50, what I mean is, to make a litre of pure water, you're going to have a litre of wastewater. So you're going to pay for 2 litres of water to make 1 litre of pure, if that makes sense. And that's where I'm lucky, because I'm not on a water meter. I just pay £40 a month flat fee. That's it. Whereas if you're on a meter, it's going to cost me a bit more, if that kind of makes sense. And like Nelly's saying as well, If you don't put it down the drain, you can claim a bit of that to offset as well. But just go through your water supply on that one. So I'm trying to keep up with the comments as I go. Matt's just saying I need to work out how much filters are and how often they need changing to work out the cost to see what the difference is. Yeah, just bear with me, everyone. I'm trying to kind of get this so anyone watching, whether you're new or, I hate using the word advanced, but into it and you know what you're going on, is it's a big cost. But luckily I did this from day one because I had to, because I'm in a hard water area. But I'll try and explain a few things. So if you're doing DI, you need to put this bag of resin, and normally half a bag of this will fit what I've got as 11 litre DI vessel. So I can fill my DI vessel up twice out of one bag of resin. If that makes sense. And I think from what Matt's saying, every 2 months he's using a whole bag, so it's cost him £100. So probably, let's just say, argument's sake, you're looking at £600 a year in resin, and you can lower it by doing what Matt's doing, double DI. But is that double DI as well, Matt? Is it? So it would cost you more if you just had the one DI vessel rather than going through two. Just look it up on YouTube and you'll understand a bit more. But however, there's no wastewater produced using that method. So that's not going down the drain and not getting charged for it, I suppose. But it's definitely cheaper to do RODI unless you're in a really soft water area and your water usage isn't that high, if that makes sense. So what I'll go through next then is reverse osmosis and DI. Right, I'll just, sorry, wrong button. Go on to the website. Let's go. Keeps doing weird and wonderful things to me. Back to this page, you can get different vessels here, which just hold more resin. So it just means basically the less times you need to change it. But then again, when you change it, the bigger the vessel, the harder the work is. It's not always, as everything, it's not always easy. Sorry, Matt's just come up with a comment. He's just saying, yeah, double DI. So use 5 bags a year because in the winter you use less. All right. So it's probably around about then, for argument's sake, planning £500 a year on resin because you're DI only. And that's with the TDS level being really nice and low as well. So it is really low. That's good. But sorry, another comment. Denley's just saying to Matt, you can adjust your pure waste ratio. So like I said, 60-40 or 50-50. Supply will sort it out for you. I change my pre-filters every 2 months. Wow, I was going to come on to that, Nelly. And you buy pre-filters in bulk to get a good deal. So hopefully Matt will explain that in a bit as well, or someone else will. And Mark's saying as well, Matt, you can use 50-degree water through your DI vessel. And that's what you did through winter. Is that degrees is in temperature? But sorry, going back to the screen share. So that's your resin. Let's go on. So I keep pressing these and weird screens jump up in the way. Go back to the filter system. So that's DI hopefully kind of explained. And then I'll go into this reverse osmosis. I'll try and get my... Basically, all right, there's lots of different systems out here. It gets confusing. You can get this system like here. And basically that is in the van, fitted on your tank. So basically when you get home at night, what you do is you plug your hose pipe from your house tap, goes into a port, so it feeds your van, goes through the reverse osmosis and DI, makes pure water and fills up the tank in your van. Job done. But this is without the autofill or the auto flush systems. So that's cheaper. If you want to buy that, but with the auto flush and the extra gubbins, like the auto fill and shut off, then that figure will go up. What I will say is whether you get a system that's fitted on your van or static, the price is exactly the same. So rather than having it fitted on my van, like here's another one. It says it's on demand, 2,000 gallons per day. So that's the same as mine, £899. but it hasn't got the automatic features on it. So that's RO and DI. This bit here is the casing, and inside that is the reverse osmosis. Goes through that before going through your DI vessel. But what you can see here is at the front, you've got these two little black round cylinders. There's no other photos to show. That's where your pre-filters. So the water goes through your pre-filters before the membrane, before the DI vessel. So that's why you'll probably hear 4 stages, because the pre-filters, there's 2 of them. One's a sediment, but it's paper. And that just think in the water, there's big bits in there which will cause harm to your membrane. So that captures it. The pre-filters protect your membrane. Once it's gone through the paper one, it goes through a carbon filter. So like with your fish tanks, that's removing all the chemicals that are harmful to the fish. It's removing the chemicals that are harmful to your membrane. Then it goes into the membrane. And what Neil's saying is he changes his pre-filters every 2 months, because if your pre-filters fail, which they will do if they're overused, then it means your membrane is going to get affected and you're going to have to spend a lot of money in membrane, which is what's happening to me. Sorry, just going back to near the comments. If I press the right button, Mark saying yes, temperature reference 50 degrees, and Adorn saying put off 40/40 a long time ago due to the price of the filter, but now found you can. Don't know what that bit means, but I take it you're thinking about the price. 40/40, I'll come into in a minute, because you get different size filtration systems. So 40/40, just think is a large membrane. And if you buy a smaller system, it'd be a different size. There's 2 sizes basically. But going back to this bit, they're saying on here, you can get different systems, all right? It depends what you want. I would speak to your supplier who will best suit you. But I've gone one stage further. I basically brought this, but it's got the extra gubbins on it. So you can see, like, it's $899 for that. And then I'll just show you the one I've got. Which, like I said, is this system exactly the same. This bit here where there's these 2, that's a picture of the front. That's your pre-filter. So the one on the left, that's what your 20-inch carbon filter goes in. Then the water goes through there first. Like I was trying to explain, the carbon gets all the big particles in the water that will damage your RO membrane. Once it's passed through, it goes into this bit here, which is your carbon. That then takes out the chemicals, and then from there it gets fed into behind here. Don't know if you can just see here, that's the housing where the RO membrane is. 40/40, it's a 20-inch membrane. They're just numbers. Your suppliers will explain it all to you. Now that membrane, out of the whole system, will do 99 to 95% of the work of making pure water. So like we're trying to say, for me, for example, it goes from a tap at 264 parts per million. When it's a brand new filter, it'll be between 3 and 5, depends on the water pressure at the time. And let's say it's coming out at 5 parts per million. It's then going, rather than out the tap, say at 43 parts per million, it's coming out at 5, if that makes sense, into the resin deionization vessel, where it's got the resin, the DI, and that polishes it down from then 5 to 0 parts per million. The softer the water it is going into your resin, the longer the resin lasts. And also the more water you're putting through it, the less it's going to last. So if you're putting tons of water through there at a higher parts per million, you're going to start eating up your resin, if that kind of makes sense. So if you're using large volumes of water, even like in Matt's scenario, I would say to Matt, it's really low, 43 to 55. You would save so much money. I guarantee you'll probably use 1 bag of resin for the whole year, 100 quid through resin, as opposed to £500. And then if you go back to thinking it's a lot of money, which it is, well, that figure is 1,548 for everything singing or dancing, so it's fully automated. We'll take 500 quid off that, you're spending £1,000. Where in 3 years, that would have paid for itself, if that kind of makes sense. But there are running costs. If you mess up your membrane, they're expensive, which I'll come on to. I'll just go back to some of the comments. Sorry. Dawn's just saying you sourced individual parts and you can save it up for yourself. Simple enough. Okay, yeah. Can make these systems yourself. Like I said, I bought mine from X Line Supplier, all done singing, all dancing. I did it on day one, so I wouldn't have a clue. And you could probably build a system up yourself and add bits to it as you go, or just do it all out. It depends on you, doesn't it? And what you think your ability is. So there are ways of doing it. So Nelly's just come what 40/40 means. So it's 40 inches long, 4 inches wide. There you go. And like I said, there's two. It's either 40 inches or 20 inches. I'll try and show two different sizes, if that makes sense, of what they use. And Dawn saying actually you can have a smaller version of 40/20. It depends on your needs. Is that what I'm saying? Instead of 4 inches, 20 inches means two. It's probably me getting confused as well. Because even though I might sound like I know what I'm going on about, I just speak to the supplier. But yeah, going back to, so that's a system I've got 2,000 gallons per day. I've got it what's called static. So rather than that system being fitted on my van, I have just the tank. So as you know, it's probably called a delivery system only. So it's just the tank. I pump the water from a holding tank, which is an IBC tank. They can cost up to 400 quid brand new. Get reconditioned ones or buy them secondhand like I did for 50 quid. Took a lot of effort to wash it out. But my RODI unit fills up 1,000 litres in the IBC tank. That's my holding tank. I have a submersible pump, which I think cost about 60, 70 quid from Screwfix or Wix. 250 litres per minute. So it's 2 minutes to fill up my 500-litre tank with a transfer hose and a nozzle like you get to filling up your petrol into your van. I just press that and it fills up my tank. My machine will automatically, because the way it's set up and what I paid for it, start auto flushing to protect the life of my membrane. It does it itself. It's rather than me manually doing it. And it will start producing pure water. And in 4 hours, that IBC tank, if it was empty, will be full of 1,000 litres. And obviously, I'm out working and my tank is filling up with water. Whereas if I had a system instead of static that was attached to my tank in my van, I would have to have my van stationary for 4 hours or more. So I think it takes slightly longer, to be honest. And I can't go out and work. So if I come home lunchtime, that'd be me stuffed for 4 hours. But because I've got a holding tank, I can transfer what I need into my tank, get out working. While I'm working, my holding tank's making more. So when I come home, say at 5 after filling up at lunchtime, it's all full and I can fill up my tank for tomorrow, done. And then it's refilling up my IBC tank. So another good way of doing it static as opposed to having the RODI in your tank. This makes sense. I can run multiple vans rather than one van. There's pros and cons because if I'm on a commercial job, I can't produce water while I'm working. If I had a system on the van, it can be making water while I'm working to keep me topped up and save me having to drive home, for example. So best of both worlds is have one on your van, one in your shed as a static setup, but I haven't got that. But it's definitely there to think about, isn't it? So hopefully that kind of makes sense. Sorry, just coming back. 2040 is 20 inches long by 4, and Dawn saying £500 is your setup for 40/20 plus DI plus IBC. Wow, that's really good. Pre-filter and transfer pump and hose. Wow, mate, where did you, if you don't mind, shove that in there for the people on here who are looking at trying to get the same kind of setup? Because that is a really good value for money. That's really good. It's impressive, actually. Like I said, mine's 3 times the amount. So that's really cool, mate. Hopefully it'll help people. Like someone like Matt as well. You can see he's spending 500 quid, what he's spending here on resin. Probably do what a Dawn window cleaning's doing. And then you're going to be spending 100 quid a year on resin, as long as the RA membrane's working okay. Right, let's try and find a couple of things out. I'll just try and find out the RO membrane because basically I can tell you what I spent on mine. Don't want filter system. That's the one I want. Right, let me go into screen share. Your pre-filters then. So this is the paper one. So to go in that first pre-filter, your paper one, this is like Nelly saying where it says 20, so 40, 40. Basically for your pre-filter needs this, a 20-inch debris sediment paper pre-filter, £7.99. If you had a smaller setup, which I'll come on to later, the pre-filter is called a 10-inch. It's either 20 or 10, and the 10-inch is £3. And it's not just paper that you use, it's carbon as well. So for mine being 40/40, it needs a 20-inch carbon, and that cost me £19.12. Sorry, with VAT, 22.94. Just call it 23 quid. And then the paper one, it'll load up £9. So just call it 30 quid. And then on top of that, you've got delivery. Now, these pre-filters, like Nelly saying he changes every 2 months on the Xline website, they advise you to change it between 3 and 4 months. So I would like to change mine every 3 to be safe. And I can see Nelly's changing his every 2 to be even safer. And it's probably also because he's putting a hell of a lot more water through the system as well. And as long as you change your pre-filters within the time frame that's recommended, or like Nelly, just a bit more to make sure, it's going to do its job of protecting your membrane. If I don't change my pre-filters, say between every 3 to 4 months, so I'm going over that, chances are they get shot and then my membrane is going to get hit because the pre-filters aren't doing the job of protecting the membrane, basically. And because my TDS level's high, that's what was happening to me, which I'll come into as well. And my other method, I got told to go around that. So I'm just going through some of the comments. Some good things come up in here as well. Dawn saying as well, keep spare DI in the van. So, for example, for me, I've got my static system. What you're saying as well, I have a DI vessel in the van. So it can be filtered through your DI. Or, like you're saying as well, in an emergency, I can put tap water in my main van and the resin in the DI is going to polish it down. Yes, I'm going to take a hit, but it's going to save me driving back to fill up with water, if that kind of makes sense. That's a good idea. Mark's is saying your resin lasts you 2 years before it starts reading 0.001 parts per million. That is bloody well impressive. So there you go, Matt. That's £100 every 2 years just to get to 0.001. Dawn saying just source individual bits. AliExpress spare membranes are 80 quid. No worries, James, mate. Sorry if I've missed you. Good luck, mate. Have a good week. Yeah, and Nelly's just saying to you, Matt, Google RO man. Hopefully what I'm saying is just giving you food for thought more than anything else. But that's your pre-filters, so that's the cost there. Just saying it's 30 quid every 3 months. That would work out £10 a month for argument's sake. Like we said, the resin's 100 quid. Let's talk that a year. So it's £130 for a year if everything's optimum. And that will keep you tickety-boo. But like I said, for me, I need a booster pump because I'll just come on to that. So you got your TDS level, reading level. Mine's high, so I need an RODI unit. That's it. I'd always say to someone, if you're 100 parts per million or under, use an RODI system because as you get busier, the amount of water you put through it, it's going to cost you more in resin. Matt's probably hovering around the 50 parts per million mark because he's using a certain amount of water and he's saying he's using his resin every 2 months. It's 100 quid. I would say invest in reverse osmosis. It will bring down the cost of resin in a year. And like a Dawn saying, rather than maybe going the expensive way I've done with all the gubbins, the auto flush, auto fill, but I need that. You can build an RO system cheaper than that, but it's going to reduce your resin, which we'll come back to because that's the main thing probably you want to go off. But if you don't look after your pre-filters, your RO membrane's going to blow and is going to need replacing. Your membrane should last between 3 and 5 years. when I first started, my membrane was lasting me 1 year. And I knew I was doing something wrong, but I was changing my pre-filters every 3 months. I was changing my resin as soon as my parts per million got 0.004. I'd order new resin. By the time it arrived, it was 0.006 parts per million. I changed my resin to keep it as low as possible all the time. And that's how I roll, basically. But just bear with me while I try and find out where I can find membranes. Here we go. Let's go into screen share. Right, membranes then. There are different membranes, all right. You'll see here different figures. So you've got 100 gallons per day, £30 for the membrane. That's no good for the system I've got because I'm using, remember, 2,000 gallons per day. And you'll see there's another one on here where they do 150 gallons per day. Again, £38 or £45.60 with VAT, sorry. That's no good for me because the system I've got. So on their website, the next one I need is not this one, which is if you're on a 500 gallon per day. So basically, depending on the size of your reverse osmosis unit, that depends on the membrane you need to fit it, basically. The one I need is the next one, which is this one here. So it's the X-Line 40 inch, or as Nelly saying, 40/40 reverse osmosis, and it's low pressure. You can get high pressure or low pressure. I need low pressure for the system I'm working on because if you can see here, it says they recommend a minimum of 60 psi water pressure going through the membrane for it to work effectively. If it's less than that, it's not going to last 3 to 5 years. So that's where your water pressure coming out your tap is essential for your water supply to know, as well as your TDS to tell you what system you need. And then it tells you it's capable of producing 9,500 litres per day. Obviously, my system's 2,000 gallons per day, so it all works in there. And it will tell you as well, on average, when it's brand new, 99% rejection rate, which I'll come into in a minute, if it's working at 6.9 bar. My water pressure at my tap's like 25, so it's less than that. And then obviously when it goes through the membrane, because I've fitted something on my system, a pressure gauge, it's not going in at 80 psi, which I think is what's meant to be perfect. It's going in at 75, but as you can see reading in here, because I'm using a low pressure membrane, that's fine. So it seems weird, it seems technical, but just kind of like there's a lot to go into it. Learn the terminology, but speak to your supplier. They will guide you through what you need. You just really need to know what your TDS out the tap is and what the water pressure is. And they'll tell you whether you need to add a booster pump, what type of membrane needs to go in the system, but you're definitely going to need pre-filters and your resin DI. So what I thought I'd go on to is something else, is when do you need to know, because you can see here, look, the membrane, when I press the right button, 225 quid, but with VAT is 270. And I can tell you because I ordered one Saturday. With delivery, it's £281 for that membrane to fit in the housing. But that should last me between 3 and 5 years. But going back to what I said, why did it only last me 1 year? That's because the amount of chemicals and how hard my water is. The water's quite hard, but it still should work fine. Because my water pressure, I guess, is slightly down on what it should be. If it was a bit higher, it'd probably work better. As long as I change my pre-filters, but my pre-filters are probably getting hit really hard, especially carbon, because it's high in TDS. There's a lot of certain chemicals in there that are overwhelming my pre-filters, which over time is damaging my membrane, which is why it's lasting 1 year as opposed to 3. But even if I change my membrane every year, I'd rather pay £300 a year on membrane. Because when my membrane got really bad, before I knew about readings, I just realized my resin was, like I said, I was changing a bag of resin every month. So I said 2, but I was doing 2 resin changes. So one bag, £100 a month, 12 months, £1,200. Whereas if I spent 300 quid for a membrane, problem fixed. So it's cheaper to pay a lot of money for the membrane, if that kind of makes sense. So I had to do something else. Let me see if I can find something because I haven't loaded it on the page. I think I've covered it before anyway. Just got to find a folder. So I'm just trying to find something. No, that's the wrong one. That's the right one. Right. With all these other windows on here, I can't see what I'm after. But basically, I've had to buy a water softener. I can't get it up. It's made by Spectrum, which is the same make as the membranes that go in my filtration system. I was speaking to James at Xline. I said, look, something's really going wrong. I'm spending so much money on resin. I've been changing my pre-filters every 3 months. I don't know what I've done wrong because I thought it's got to be user error. And he was saying, how hard's your TDS? I said, it's really high. It's 264. And he said, it's probably, and he named some chemicals in there. And he said, they're overwhelming your pre-filters. So they need changing more often than every 3 months. Hence why Nelly probably does this every 2. So I just go into a comment. Don't forget a water softener. Yeah, just come on to that. And the Dawn saying any downside won't arrive quickly from China when you order stuff from there. But you could order probably one in advance as well. So it's on the shelf, couldn't you? But going back to, yeah, when I was saying to James, changed my membrane first time round. Obviously, in my first year, I wasn't using as much water, but when I got really busy, it ran out. Changed my membrane. Within a year, it's gone. So I brought a new membrane because they said to me, your membrane's gone. They're asking me questions. I was like, I don't know what my reverse osmosis TDS level is once it's been through the RO unit. So I'll come on to how you can tell that. And he's just explaining it's probably the chemicals in the water. So what you need is a water softener. So he sourced me a water softener. It's made by Spectrum. There's 3 different types. There's probably different ones out there now because I bought this quite a few years ago. And he guided me on I brought the more expensive one out of the 2 options, models, but there's 3 different. I've got the smaller model out of the range I've got, if that makes sense. One basically is automated. One you have to manually add salt tablets to and recharge. One you just add the salt tablets, but it automatically recharges it when it detects certain things. All right, so that's the one I went for. Just the best way to describe this is your water softener's got resin in it, but it's different to the resin you put in your DI. That's mixed bed. The other resin, all right, is permanently in the water softener. And when it gets worn out, rather than changing the resin, you add salt to the machine, press a button, and it does like a recharge cycle, if that's the proper word for it. And that recharges the resin as opposed to you taking out old resin, putting new resin in. And as long as I keep that, so the water softener's doing its job. So basically, it's knocking the TDS level down. I'd probably have to test the water, to be honest. On 264, it's making it lower. So that when it goes through the membrane, it's even lower. So the pre-filters are lasting longer than taking the full hit, if that makes sense. When I added that, my membrane was lasting me 2 to 3 years. Without it, it was every year because the amount of chemicals, even though I was changing things recommended. But your pre-filters, just think it's 30 quid for your paper and your carbon compared to 300 quid for a membrane. So keep on top of your filters, change them all the time religiously. I've had to use a water softener because of where I am. They do recommend, after speaking to James, they put on if your TDS levels at your taps over 300 parts per million, they recommend you use a water softener. So I'm close to it. So it does work. So I just seen the Dawn's comment. Yeah, everything comes from China anyway, doesn't it? So I pressed the wrong button. Matt saying, I'm guessing I wouldn't need no, you wouldn't need a water softener, mate, because your TDS level's so low, whereas mine's really high. It's almost, like I said, at the 300 parts per million. So I need a water softener. The water softener was £400. However, it's saving me a lot of money. But how do I know my RO membrane needs replacing? Well, your biggest giveaway is going to be when your resin starts needing change a lot more regular than normal. That means my membrane is not bringing down the TDS levels low enough to go through the resin to make it last longer, because my water volume's the same, because my work's all the same. So that's probably the biggest giveaway I'd say. If you're having to change or spend a lot of money on resin, then get an RO filter or add reverse osmosis to your DI. And then if you get to the point where you notice things are going all fine, but then when you start finding your resin is needing change more regular, as soon as it starts getting stupid, it's probably because your membrane's is shot. And obviously it's going to change as it wears anyway, like your resin will. And the more regularly your resin needs changing, the worse your membrane's getting, if that makes sense. But there is a way of keeping on top of it. So I just go to some comments on here as well. Hopefully I haven't scared you, Matt. Stick with double DI. It depends on your outgoings. Just do your research and maybe speak to another window cleaner in your area that use reverse osmosis and DI. It'd be handy if he's using roughly the same water as you and you see the difference. Gonna do a spreadsheet after live. Yeah, with me, I just go on my phone in the notes app. I always put down the date I changed or last changed the pre-filters, when I last changed the membrane, and when I last, what else you got to do? Change the resin. And I use that to look back. The more frequent I start seeing the resin starts to get changed, that's an indication to me that my membrane's starting to wear a bit. And I just keep an eye on things that way. And in my Apple calendar, I just set every 3 months a warning on the beginning of the month, change the pre-filters. So I change them religiously for £30. So I just did some more comments. So Dawn's saying you're 200, but at 260, see why you need a softener. Yeah, I had to, because it's close to 300, but I was seeing it myself. And then when James from X-Line told me all this stuff, I was just like, I'll just do it, because I know it's a lot of money to me, but in the long run, it's going to save me more. So how do I know when my membrane is starting to play up, apart from looking at or knowing that my resin's starting to get changed more frequently and it's getting less and less time between changes? Right. Trying to find something now. ADS, TDS meter. Right. You probably all know about this TDS meter. I've got one of these and something called a dual inline TDS meter, which most you probably know anyway. Still use this one because it's great for measuring the water out of your tap TDS. And it's also great for measuring it as soon as it's come out your brush. So you know what it's coming out on the glass with as well, if you're kind of like that way inclined. But I'll just go to my screen share. So obviously, here's your TDS meter, £22, it's about 25 quid. And this one here to the left, that's called a dual inline TDS meter. And you can see it's 80 quid. I've got that fitted to my system. Plus VAT, it's now £94.80p. And here it is. So it can give you two TDS readings. It says in and out, and you get two lots of wires, two probes that you just fit within your system. To color coded red and blue. So what I'm going to go to is hopefully something, and I'm hoping this will work. So let's see what we got here. Okay, so I don't know if you've heard of this. There's an RO membrane rejection rate. So that's the rate at which it's getting rid of the crappy water and it's bringing you soft water before it goes into your DI membrane. Hopefully this makes sense. And this is where I use the dual TDS meter. So it's fitted on my system, but I'll just go over a couple of things first. So how do you work out an RO rejection rate? Now you can go online. There are some pages where you can just input your TDS reading after the reverse osmosis and also what your tap TDS is, and it will automatically tell you the membrane. Or there's a way of working it out. And this is how you work it out basically. So like I said, from my tap, all right, the TDS is 264 parts per million, or that's what it was Saturday. Excuse me while I have one of these. So write that figure down, and then I'm going to take a reading which I've got from my dual inline TDS meter, which I'll show you in a minute. But my membrane, after the water's passed through that, bear in mind this is after it's come through the water softener, it's coming out at 20 parts per million. So I take 20 parts per million off the reading out of the tap. So 264 minus 20 gives me a reading of 244. And then what I've got to do with that figure is divide it again from my original reading, which is the TDS from the tap. So basically, it's 244 divided by 264. And as you can see, it will give me on the calculator 0.924. So to work out the percentage, you probably guessed, you times that figure by 100. So 0.924 times 100 gives me 92.4. This means at the moment, my membrane has got a rejection rate of 92.4%. Now that seems good, but in fact, that is rubbish because I'm having to change my membrane. I will have to change my resin a lot more regular than I did before now. Rather than hanging about to see how many months I can do that, I've just gone sod this because it's happened to me before. I know when my membrane gets around 20, it's blown. So therefore, it's more cost effective to buy a new membrane. 300 quid, just call it, with delivery. It's going to save me a hell of a lot through the year on resin rather than trying to muscle through, which I've done before, because I couldn't afford a membrane, but it was costing me a lot more on resin. So it would have been easier to buy a membrane, if that makes sense. So I just sent some comments. I'll just go back to them. Nellie's just saying, I've got an inline TDS between RO and DI. When it creeps to 15, you'll change the RO. Like I said, as soon as it's 20, I know mine's completely blown. And like I said, the rejection rate sounds good at 92.4%. But remember, it's 99% is the rejection rate. And I'd say when it gets to around 95%, your rejection rate, you want to start thinking about you're going to have to order a new RO membrane. There are things you can do to try and see if you can fix that. When you look on the internet, it will tell you when it gets to a rejection rate of 85%, change your membrane. Some of them even say 75, but I'd say for window cleaning, no. When it gets to 95%, in order to be efficient with your money, when it comes down to resin, when it gets to 95%, starts dropping below that, think about it. That's my advice. Like I said, mine's 92, but it's going to cost me a lot. Like I said, brand new membrane in there, my resin's going to last me 6 to 9 months straight away. And that'll be half a bag of resin. So that's your inline TDS meter. Sorry, just come back, another comment. Dawn's just saying, I'll run my RO for a few minutes before reconnecting it to DI. Takes a while to start up, to drop. So the TDS level, when you first turn on your filtration unit, when you've got a inline TDS meter, which I'll show you in a minute, you'll see the figure after the RO is quite high. It doesn't start really low. As more water passes through it, that TDS reading after your reverse osmosis will start dropping. And then the longer it runs, the smaller it gets, basically. So it's optimum level, if that makes sense. And like Mark's saying, you'll hear this flushy system every 20 minutes before every fill. Whereas I don't have to do that on my system because it automatically does what's called a flush. And if you don't do it automatically, you've got to manually do it. And these things improve the life of your membrane. So please, if you don't know what I'm on about, just bear with me. But going back anyway to this. So hopefully that's helpful working out what your rejection rate is, doing it manually. You can go online, there's calculators, and it just tells you to input certain readings and it will come up with the figure for you. Right, here's a picture of my inline TDS meter of the probes. I'm kind of hoping you can see this. I took a picture of it on my phone and I've whacked it in here, and it's like a PowerPoint presentation, if that makes sense. What you can see is the casing from a pre-filter, and you'll see the DI vessel on the left, and you'll see I've got some black hose where one's feeding into the vessel and the one closest to you is feeding out to my IBC tank. So that's the product. The one at the back with the red colour tape round a probe, that is my dual inline TDS meter, and it's got two probes. You can see you just attach it into your hose pipe, and then the probe is stuck in there, and that will read the TDS level after it's passed through the reverse osmosis membrane while it's feeding it into the DI. So it's giving me a reading when it says in, rather than give me the tap reading, so to speak. I'm getting the reading after the reverse osmosis, basically, before it goes in the resin. So that's how I know mine is at 20 parts per million, because of that probe there. Once it's passed through the resin DI and it's coming out to feed into my tank, or for me, the holding tank, the blue coloured probe, that will be marked as out on the inline TDS meter. And as you probably guessed it, that's telling me the TDS level reading of my pure water product. So that's how I know when I need to change my resin, if that kind of makes sense. That's how the dual inline TDS meter works. And then just to show you another picture where the wires from the probes go to, I've got this stuck on the side. Just look them up, all right. Dual inline TDS meter. You've got two buttons at the bottom. One says in, one says out. When you press in, I can't zoom in for you, but where it says 20, then parts per million to the left of it, it says in as well. And if I press out, that funny old thing will change to out. To the right of the reading where it says 20 parts per million, where there's a green light, that's illuminating the word in. And if I was to press the right hand button at the bottom to out, that green light will move across one to the right, which will say out. So that's giving me readings in and out. But I know the way I've got it set up into my system, that the red probe, that's going to read the reading of the TDS level after the reverse osmosis before it hits the DI. And then the blue one is reading out. So that's my product. And that's how I know what the TDS levels are it's making, and I know when to change the resin. So that is basically this, an inline TDS meter. There you go. Got two of these, and you just basically cut the hose feed, basically attach it to either side of this. They are John Guests, they push in and out. But this probe here, you cannot take out of that. Once it's fitted in, it's in. So be careful, don't snap these, because I've done that. And as you can see, it's going to cost you 90 quid to replace the whole unit, which is what I've had to do before. So don't be too heavy-handed. But that's your inline or dual inline TDS meter. And then I've still got this one because that's what I started with. And I use that to read me tap readings, to give me the reading to work out the rejection rate. The dual inline TDS reading will give me the reading after the reverse osmosis, and then also tells me the TDS levels after it's come through the resin, through the DI vessel. So I know when to change the resin. And then I can still use this again as well to double check what it is after it's passed through my tank and hoses, so I know what's going on the glass. That's basically what I do. So I just go back to some of these comments because I'm waffling, and hopefully it doesn't sound too technical, but it was a lot for me to get my head around. Just going back around to what flushing is. Like I said, for me, when I turn my system on, because it's automatically, as soon as it detects the water levels dropped in my holding tank, because it's static, but if it is in my van, the water level drops in my main tank. As long as I've got the tap water feed connected to it, system kicks in and goes onto what's called a fill cycle. So for 5 minutes, it's going to do nothing but with the water flush out my RO membrane, because when it's working, it's full of crappy water. So the flushes the crappy water out, basically, to make it easier for the RO membrane to work. If it didn't do that, it's going to shorten the life. By doing the flush, it's going to extend the life of your membrane a bit more to give you a bit more bang for your buck. So when you see like people saying flush, like if I press the right button, Mark saying flush your system for 20 minutes. Like for mine, it flushes it for 5 minutes before it starts producing the pure water. And then, like I said, on your TDS readings, after the RO, it's going to be high, but it will quickly reduce and it will get smaller and smaller the longer that system's running because it's then optimal. And that's when it'll drop to really low. So don't think it's going to be automatically, say, at 3 or 5 or like nearly 9. It's going to take a little while to drop down to that. And then the lower that number is, the less work your resin's got to do. And then what happens with my system is every hour it stops filling and does another flush cycle, 5 minutes, and then fills again for an hour and continues that until my tank's full. So that happens automatically rather than me doing it manually. So, like I said, my system can fill up my holding tank with water without me being there and I'm out working. That's why I can nip home, refill up my tank, straight out again. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. Dawn saying inline meters 25 quid. I need to sign around. Yeah, so do I think. That's like a quarter of the cost of what I said, but I suppose it depends where you get them from and if they work. But that's what I've got. And as long as I look after it, I'll keep working. But yeah, definitely shop around. It's also saying RO on startup maybe 50. That's TDS. And after 5 minutes, it will go down to 7 if everything's working well. So it doesn't take that long to get down to the low number. Mark saying your inline TDS is the same as mine. Oh, brilliant, mate. Is that as in 20 parts per million? Or because my membrane's shot, I need a new one. And like I said, my rejection rate is 92.4%, which sounds great, but it's not. And also, the more water flushing through my system, the worse my membrane's going to get. So the less that rejection rate's going to go. And the lower that number, the quicker me changing resin's going to be, if that makes sense. But to be more cost effective, I've just bit the bullet while I got the money and said, bugger it, I'm buying a new membrane. And then make sure I do a better job. If you remember on one of my lives, I told you I actually put my DI resin and plumbed it in the wrong way round. So I think that's what's buggered up my membrane. And also when I fitted that pressure gauge on my water softener, there's something you twist so you can bypass the water softener so the water doesn't go through there. I'd left that off for 2 weeks as well. So my membrane was trying to filter water straight from the tap as opposed to after the water softener. So I think the combination of that has helped accelerate my membrane getting blown. So it's cost me money, but it's going to be worth me in the long run changing it. Going to cost me less on resin. So Dawn's saying something I should do is back flush system every week. Yeah, going back, that's a good point there, Dawn. When I spoke to Xline and said, look, I've got a problem with my membrane. I've worked out the rejection rate. It sounds high. It's 92.4%. All I want to know is, do I need to change my membrane? Answer's yes. But he did say before you do that, what you need to do, because I said my system's got the autofill. What he's saying is when I turn the system on and it needs to fill up, it will do the auto flush. And he says, once it stops auto flushing, it goes to producing water. Turn it off, turn it on. It'll repeat that. He said, try and do an auto flush 6 times. That's what I did. Half an hour, 30 minutes of auto flushing. And he said, hopefully that will knock down the TDS after the RO membrane. It hasn't. So I definitely need a new membrane. So when you hear people or you read the forum saying, try flushing it again, that's what they're on about doing. That kind of makes sense. Oh, same TDS meter. Sorry, Mark. Yeah. So the dual inline, is it HM? I can't remember. I know when you look on most suppliers, they're all. Sorry, wrong one. they're all kind of like the same. But yeah, HM. And I know when I measured round, be careful when you look up in here because you get these bits at different sizes because they fit onto different. This one here will fit your normal garden hose. And if you see anything cheaper, sometimes it's for something that's about the size of your whole hose, if that makes sense. While I'm on here, actually, I'll just come on to. No, we don't want van system accessories. Right, just bear with me. I'll try and find where I'm going. Filter system, sorry. Yeah, different options as well. So yeah, as well as having like I've got one of these big systems, you can get bigger ones as well. You've probably seen these different size ones. These are a lot cheaper. So 270 quid. And then what you've got here is an RO membrane. Then you'll have your paper and your carbon and your resin. So you've got these smaller cartridges. So where like mine's a 20-inch membrane, that's a 10-inch membrane, if that makes sense. And you can see it produces 200 gallons per day. And then you can get different ones where it's like 100, 150, 200, 500. So it depends on your demand for water. So you don't have to go for like the massive system I've got. And then you can get add-on features on here too as well, so that it's got the auto flush and all that kind of thing. I think people who use these as well is anyone that does aquariums, so they need soft water. They add the minerals to it if it's marine water. They use these systems. So it can fill up your IBC tank, but it'll just do it a lot slower than the bigger system that I've got. So it depends on your demand for water. So you see some people get systems like this to fill up a small 600 litre, say, holding tank and then fill up barrels of water. So then using your backpacks or your trolleys, and then you can build your system up as you go. So for Matt as well, something like this could be ideal. I don't know. Just work out how many litres in a day it's going to make for you in a 24-hour period, so to speak. But bear in mind, if you're going to grow, you're probably going to need a bigger system. So you might as well go for the next system up or something like that. So I just seen some comments coming in. John's just saying, make sure you buy a very good ball valve for the wastewater outlet. Enables to dial in the ratio pure to waste easier with more control. Do not buy a twist tap. There's a couple of answers. I'll just come back to that because mine's slightly different. Yes, Nelly, I know. Yeah, so as well as a dual, you can get a triple. So you could have it set up to measure your water before it goes through the RO membrane, the water after the RO, and the water after the DI. So you can get your tap reading after RO, after DI, and just push of a button, you get all those readings. So you then won't need to use your handheld TDS meter. Dawn saying most customers are unaware of the costs involved if you try and explain. Yeah. See, the Rolls Royce, I'm supposed to know a bit about it, and my eyes and head gets blown sometimes. And yeah, and like you're saying, it feels like you're trying to bullshit a bullshitter sort of thing. We're better for want of words. So Dawn's saying, which ball valve? So I'm just going to go back to my system to try and explain something, which I think is the same sort of thing. It's not easy, whatever we do, is it? Where's my system? Right, just bear with me. I'll come back to the screen and right, there's my system. All right. So it's got the DI vessel, as we said, pre-filters, 20-inch reverse osmosis or 40/40 membrane at the back. And then I've got this grey box on the top. So that's all the auto fill function, auto flush, and then it's got a power socket because also inside that I've got my booster pump to kick in because my house pressure is not high enough. So it gives it that extra pressure to go through the membrane so everything works. And I get the most of my money out of the membrane rather than it's cost me tons to keep replacing it. If I was to undo these top outer screws like here, there, and these lower ones on the outer ones, when I take that off, inside there is some gubbins. So there's pipe work and some, what's it called, solenoids. And that's your autofill stuff. And also in there, there is something for me to twist with a screwdriver. Unfortunately, I can't show what it looks like inside. And when I twist something in there with the screwdriver, that adjusts the ratio of product to wastewater. And when you buy it, set to 60/40. And as you change it, it's going to adjust it, but there are no numbers or indicators. So how I had to do it was I had to unplug my system. So basically I had 2 jugs of water and I'd measure the water going into one jug, which is my product, and another one was my wastewater going to another jug. And then basically I'd try and fill up, say, a litre and then work out what the ratio is. So if I wanted it 50-50, there'll be a litre of waste, a litre of product in both. Then I know I've hit it by twisting this little thing because there's no numbers in there telling me what's 50%, what's 60%. And then again, if I wanted to hit 60-40%, I'd have to work out what it should be between the two and then keep twisting it and play around, measuring the water in the jug. It's a bit long-winded, but that's the only way I could do it because I did change it to 50-50, then I changed it back to 60-40. But there's other factors involved because it depends on your water pressure from your mains house at the time. And we all know, depends on the time of day, that can change as well. So that's how I had to do it on mine. And I guess what you're saying with ball valve, there's something else you can buy to if you was going to do it yourself. Whereas what I bought was a whole system all made for me. And I just spoke to them and they told me what to do. So that's what I had to do to get around it. Because I've done some blinding mistakes. And that's how you learn, basically, innit? Okay, Nelly's just saying, John, I use a needle valve. Matt's saying you've got the results of your calculations. Matt, go for it. You've done some working out there, and hopefully it's been a worthwhile exercise. And I think there's going to be a lot of people out here who may be watching this later who will be interested because it will apply to them. Send them in, mate. I'm just going to have a rum and coke in the meantime. So Matt's done his workings out and he's saying if he used RO, then you'd use twice the amount of water because there's wastewater. Whereas with DI, there's no wastewater. So you've factored everything in and including the price of your filters, like every, say, 3 months. Without buying the system, you're saying it will cost you £671 a year. Whereas what you're doing now with double DI, just through the resin, let's say that's £500 a year. But is that also including the water you're going to use to filter through 7,000 litres a month? That would be on top of the £500, wouldn't it? But I know there's no wastage, so there's no drainage, if that makes sense. Has that kind of included that, mate? Right, you just said if you're doing double DI and going off what you did last year, it's 400. So yeah, say about £500. But what about the cost of the water that you're having to pay for your water bill on top of that? I guess then you're pretty accurate. I have no idea. Guess there's not much between it. John's just saying a needle valve is similar. Is it still a quarter turn to the right? So in my head, righty tighty. Matt's just saying that includes water as well. Nice one. So for you, it's cheaper then, isn't it, Matt? Through that exercise that you double DI as opposed to reverse osmosis because of the wastage water. Don't mention the water meter. I'm just wondering, Matt, what if you work it out? What if you didn't put your wastage water down the drain? But I think you'd have to speak to your water company for this to see how much money would then offset what it would cost you to RODI because you're not putting it down the drain because you're just sending it around your garden, for example. And I'm not sure, but I think to do that, you can buy a meter reading where it measures the wastewater coming out and they can do on the spot checks. And I think the meter has to be something they approve. Once you've fitted that, they can just do a spot check to make sure the water isn't going down the drain. So see, for example, you've got it going through around your garden in your drip system or whatever like that, then that will offset your water bill as well, which I know a lot of people do. Obviously, I'm fortunate because I'm just 40 quid a month. Right, yeah. And you're saying if you had two vans, it'd be cheaper with the RO because you're using that amount of water. And plus, with a holding tank, you'd be able to run two vans off one RODI system, if that makes sense, as opposed to two. But it's still handy, isn't it, to know these things because you need to make decisions at some point. Whereas my hands were tied behind my back because of the tap TDS level was so high. When I rang X-Line and said, right, I'm 25 PSI pressure out the tap and my tap TDS level is 260, is like you need reverse osmosis DI. Then when he's like, how much water are you going to use? I'm like, I hadn't even started yet. So I just went big because I knew I'm going to build up, aren't I, at some point. So rather than buying something small, I might as well just go straight for it. I'll buy something and then replace it with something else. And then I just went for the auto flush and all the auto systems. I thought, yeah, just do that because it's easy for me anyway. System's been good. It's lasted me. I've learned my mistakes. Like I said, I've learned I've had to get a water softener. I've learned the repercussions of not changing your pre-filters on time, or even I was changing them on time. I knew something was wrong because the resin was costing me too much. Then I realised I need an inline TDS meter so I can work out when my membrane's broken, worked out the rejection rate, all that kind of stuff to keep an eye on it so I can make these decisions of buying stuff before it's flaming obvious. Because normally when it's flaming obvious, you've got to do something. That's when you haven't got a lot of money in the bank as well. So I try and stay one step ahead of the game. Sorry, Matt's just saying maybe I should sell the water and make the cost back. And it was a very quick workings out. Thing is, you're never going, Matt. You're never going to be 100% on because there's so many variables, isn't there? Like water companies divert water, or they get pump water in from somewhere else. Certain times of day, the water pressure will drop, so things are working harder. Rule of thumb is just go off how often you're changing your resin, and if it's starting to be a bit much, I think going RO will definitely save your resin. But then the offset is you're paying for wastewater unless you don't put it down the drain, basically. Nellie's saying, Matt, right decision. And you just said if I work out on £500 resin, then it works out the same. So you're not gaining by much for the offset of buying an RODI system. But you're probably now thinking if you expand and get a second van, you already know it's worthwhile then getting an RODI system, probably a holding tank set up. So it's only one system to run two vans, if that kind of makes sense. That's you're one step ahead of the game there, aren't you? And John's saying, how long does it take you guys to drive home and fill up the, oh, for me, tank and back? Or is it not possible for most of you? Oh, so that's in general for everyone, John. Right, for me, if I'm going to a place called Whiz Beach, it's normally between 15, 20-minute drive there, depending where I am, what part of Whiz Beach. Let's just call it 20-minute drive. So if I run out of water, I'm going to be a 20-minute drive home. That's a 20-minute drive back. So that's 40 minutes wasted. And even though it might take 5 to 10 minutes, let's say, to fill up my DI system, holding tank, and the spare barrels, if we've eaten into them, you can have a cup of tea. You might say it's 20 minutes. So it's going to cost me an hour, basically. That's why me and Matthew tend to, when we get around lunchtime, rather than having to lift up 25-litre barrels, which is going to affect your back doing that every day, we just say, we'll go home. When we fill up, we'll have a cup of tea and sit down and have lunch rather than chucking sandwiches down your neck in 5 minutes. And we'll bomb out. And then that way, at the end of the day, Matthew's not got to fill up a whole tank. He just tops stuff up and that's him done. Van's ready for tomorrow. And that's another reason for me as well to realise I need to keep my work local. I've got a 500-litre tank in my van, which is not enough for two people to use. We probably use more water than some people. At the end of the day, if the windows are dirty, you're going to use more water. So we don't try and ration it. We just do what it needs doing. And it's another way of maybe I have to start thinking, keep my work as local as possible for them reasons. You know what I mean? Don't know about the same with everyone else. Another thing, if you work in, it's handy if you've got spotless water nearby. Might cost me water, but it's saving me time. You know what I mean? Rinse volume, yeah, John. I have my PSI. It was set at 70. Me and Matthew dropped ours back down to 60. So and we used to do it at 30 when I first started, then 40. So I've crept up to 60. So we have put the water up. It's just this time of year as well, and there's bird shit and things like that. Things need scrubbing. We don't bother turning the water, we just go for it. Probably slightly over clean, but I'd rather leave the place clean, knowing I don't have to worry about it. It's done. Mark saying he got fed up changing the resin every 10 weekly, so he bought the RH system. Yeah, can be a ball ache changing your resin because they're not the easiest things to empty out, are they, completely? And putting them in, and it's not fun when you get home and it's dark and you're outside with a head torch on doing it, because you just feel if you leave it to the weekend, it's going to creep up too high, and you don't want to get callbacks for spotting and all that lot. So yeah, I use RODI. I like it. Dawn's saying 5 to 10 minutes to transfer 350 litre tank. Haven't time to start off with pond pump because it dropped in an IBC. But you've now braved, okay, cutting a hole in dirty water pumps so much quicker to fill. I think it's from Wix. So I'm just looking something up because I was looking at something earlier. I can't see it now. Sure, it's on this website. Maybe it's Wix. Screwfix. Screwfix. Okay. I've got a Titan submersible pump, 250 litres per minute. I think it's about 60, 70 quid when I brought it. I've got a spare one on the shelf, but I'm sure because it's been going a couple of years, it's not as fast as what it said it would. So I was looking at this one from Screwfix, £99.99p. It's a 1000 watt mains powered dirty water pump. And if you look it up on the website, it's made by Titan. It says pumps up to 308 litres per minute. And then if you go on the Spotless Water website, if you've used Spotless Water, they pump out 200 litres per minute. So you've got a kind of idea of the speed that they're using. And obviously, you spend more money, you can get a more powerful pump, but they probably wear out after time. But at the end of the day, you want to be home long enough for a cup of tea and get out, don't you? The 5 to 10 minutes ain't bad, really, is it, out of your day? But yeah, you can get different pumps. But that's kind of price you're looking at in probably, a year, because you're using it every single day. Couple of years. Maybe when you notice it takes longer, just get a new one. Mark said that one. John saying I got double 40/40 and fill a 250 litre tank by the customer. So when you're at the customer's house, got two 40/40 membranes on your system for a 250 litre tank. So while you're cleaning the house, it's pretty much topped up in about 30-40 minutes. If the water pressure is good, most are. That's really good as well, and that's going to save you driving back. As a customer, don't mind. It just shows you as well with a little system what you can do. And if you're on a commercial job, that's going to see you all day, isn't it? Like that. It's just for me round here because my water pressure where I live is so shite. I'd have to have a water booster pump fitted in there, otherwise my membrane and all that lot's just is going to go quickly. I got you, mate. Not in a great location to go back home. So on 2-man days, have to top up or try and organise a gutter clean. So you do a certain amount of windows, then a gutter clean. So it tops up your money without having to use too much water. That's a good idea. There's loads of different ways to skin a cat, really, isn't it, to achieve what you need to achieve. And you just stick to what your means are, really, without going too far above and beyond. I agree with you there, Neil. Like you're saying, if you need to refill halfway through the day, maybe you need a bigger tank. Some days, me and Matthew can use our full tank and the 200 litres of water we carry in 8 25-litre barrels, but it's a bit of a gamble. And I'd rather, if I have to go home to fill up, do it around midday because you can have a lunch break at home. And if I did it later in the day in a big town, it's chock-a-block with traffic because everyone's trying to get home. So I'd rather, if I have to travel home, do it around midday when the traffic's not too bad. But yeah, it just goes to show when people say 500 litres for two men from work in a van is too small. 500-litre tank is probably enough top whack for one person. And then if you've got two people, you need like an 800-litre tank, 750-litre tank minimum, then working your way up. So if I need a bigger tank, I'm going to need a bigger van. So John's just saying my point is if you're on a large job and you have a system and booster pump in your van, there's a very good chance that you can use their water. Yeah, no, totally agree with you there, John. You're right. And it just shows even if it's a 250-litre tank, because that's all, say, you can fit in your van, or you can fit a 250-litre van in your tank, but it gives you room to chuck in all your gutter vac stuff and all that lot, so everything stays in your van. It just proves that system is plenty enough, isn't it? Because if you're able to fill up from there, it will get you through the day, no problem. You know what I mean? There's no limit on your size, really, even if it's something small. If you've got your setup tweaked, everyone can tweak everything to get the most out of a system, if you get what I mean, without going too big. So I totally agree with you there, John. I need a bigger tank as well if it's just me and Matthew. And like Matt's saying, 500 is great, never run low. Whereas it's me and Matthew together. You never know, one day I could get a van for Matthew and he could have a 500-litre tank, and that would leave enough room for him to have a gutter vac and everything in there, me to have a gutter vac, and we go out on our own. But it also gives me the option where if one van's away, we can still work as we are now, if that makes sense, to get the most. We don't do too bad for our little van, I don't think. A lot of it's asked out of it, I think. Yeah, Nellie's saying 500 litre for one person or per man. So if it's two-man system, 1,000 litre. And you'd probably be better off with two vans, two men, as opposed to two men in a van. But it costs too much at the moment. I haven't really looked into it for Matthew, but he's 24 and he'd have to get confident at driving. It's definitely something to think about. I've also got to think now, if Matthew goes his own way, then I'll have two vans and it's just me, you know what I mean? Did try a system in the van, but someone else to freeze in winter, or something else to freeze in winter. So may just use in the warmer months. Yeah. But like Matt would tell you, he does stuff in his vans like with duvet blankets, hot water bottles. And so there are probably ways around it. That's why I want a hot water system in my van, really, with the frost stats. So I don't have to worry about putting heaters in and out my van. It's just something I don't have to think about it, and it'll look after itself. And the reason why I went for two-man setup in my van anyway was because when I started, I definitely knew nothing about this. I just thought if there's a problem, I can put one reel back in the van and use my second reel. So for the second person setup and crack on with my day. And when I get home, figure out how I'm going to fix something. So that's why I had a two-man setup from day one. But then it worked out handy when I asked my wife to work for me. But then because of COVID, she couldn't work. And then Matthew worked for me, and that's the way it's been. It's just, you just do what you need to do to get things done, innit? There's ways around stuff. Where there's a will, there's a way. Right, has anyone got any questions now before I start thinking about signing off? Because it's 10 at night and been on a lot longer than what I thought it'd be. Hopefully, it's not blown anyone's mind. I just mainly thought because of problems I've had with RO and DI, I'd probably talk about it a bit, knowing that a lot of you know a hell of a lot more about it than me. But anything people chuck out there is good for someone else, isn't it? Like I say, Matt's looked into things straight away, got him thinking, and he's one step ahead. So he knows if he gets a second van, it's worth him going RO and DI to be cost effective. And failing that, if you've never learned about how to work out your rejection rate, if you ever see that, now you know how it's done. As well as you can just go online and fill it in on a calculator and it will tell you. So there's AI is amazing when you know how to use it. So I just go back to some of these. The water pressure in my house, mate, is not great. It's 25 psi, so it's really rubbish. Cheers, Neil, mate. Have a good week. Hopefully, you ain't got any roofs to do this week. Yeah, you're right, Mark. It's interesting knowing how others do things, or it's definitely food for thought in different scenarios for everyone, isn't it? It's all handy. It's interesting. It's nice to know what other people do. Gives you ideas as well. So hopefully it's worth something. It's just something I thought I'd do. All right, I'll call it a night, everyone. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. And see you on the live next week. Take care. Have a safe week.